Yes, sir.
Right. Today I get to spend some time talking to one of my musical heroes, that guy right over there.
Oh boy.
Some of my earliest musical memories were of listening to WACO radio growing up in Waco, Texas in the 70s and 80s, hearing songs by Steely Dan, Kenny Loggins, Donna Summer, Billy Joel, songs and artists that awakened that musician inside of me, driving my curiosity about how vocal harmonies worked, how all of these sounds and instruments came together to capture my imagination, making me want to be to hear those songs immediately again and again and again. And then in the late 70s, I discovered three albums that would literally take me to the next level: Christopher Cross's Sailing, and the Imperials albums One More Song for You and Priority. Good Lord, I still get chills thinking of hearing them for the very first time, sitting on the floor in the living room of my parents' house with headphones on, and finally thinking to myself, what if I could do this? What if this could be part of my journey? I tried to make my voice sound like Christopher's or Russ Taff's or Jim Murray's, and I can, with 2020 hindsight, look back and say that's where it all started for me on my journey to be a professional musician. And the one person who was a common link through those songs on the radio in the 70s and 80s, I call you the Wizard of Oz
Oh boy.
because it's
Yeah.
kind of true. Behind those sailing that songs off Sailing and those Imperial albums, it's Michael Omartian, my friend right over here. And to limit his involvement to just those handful of artists would be criminal. If I were to list every hit song and platinum album he's had his hand in, we'd be here for hours. So, how did I become friends with this musical legend? That's what we're going to talk about. Because when For Him was preparing to work on our fourth studio record back in 1994, we asked our label, do you think there's any chance we could get Omar to produce a few songs for us? And not only did we work with you,
Yeah.
Omar,
Yeah.
you eventually became our main producer for the rest of our career
Pretty
and one of our dearest friends in the
Well,
process.
thank you, man. That's
So,
very flattering. I don't know why you did that, but I appreciate it.
Because it's
I don't
true.
deserve it.
Because it's true. Because people need to know. They don't understand
Yeah.
how much of the music they hear now is influenced by you.
Well, I think that's just because I go back so far.
Well,
It started so long ago.
longevity
Just
is
by de facto. I mean,
well.
yeah.
So I mean, I one of my favorite things every year is on Sirius XM turning on Yacht Rock Radio,
Oh boy, yeah.
and
Yacht Rock.
you
Yes.
could actually rename it to Michael McDonald Radio
Yes, exactly.
because he's on about every other song,
That's
or
right.
Michael Omartian Radio because something that you played on or produced
Yeah,
is on almost like every other song.
that's wild.
It's so funny. People in the car get so irritated at me. I'm like, oh, hey, that's Michael Omartian. He produced that. He wrote that. He's playing on that.
Oh my gosh.
Because it just happens over and
Oh
over.
yeah. I mean, it's an unfortunate name for that particular thing because I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Jay Graydon, who played the guitar solo on Peg, and he produced Manhattan Transfer and Al Jarreau, and we were just laughing yesterday about how we got bundled into this thing called yacht rock, which is just so weird. But I guess we should revel in the fact that there's actually a category, whatever it's called. So
Well,
anyway,
there's always a category for songs people want to hear
Yeah, well.
again. So those songs have staying power.
well, yeah, that's been a blessing to hear people say, "Hey, that song you did, I really loved it. I remembered when I was a kid. I was, 10 years old or 12 years old, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm so old." But anyway, it's so funny because one of the other discussions I've had with people is that all the guys and ladies who were involved with some of those early records, we never stopped long enough to really appreciate the moment because everybody was so busy running from studio to studio. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a flourishing business, music business at the time because there was always something being recorded all the time. And there were record companies, and there was a structure that supported many, many people being able to wake up in the morning and go to a 10 o'clock session, 1 o'clock session, 7 o'clock session, every day, constantly. Hundreds of these things going on. New York, London, L.A., Nashville, and it was constant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the atmosphere that we're in right now. So I feel very fortunate that it was just by sheer numbers and percentages that a certain amount of things that you were involved with were going to kind of rise up. And that percentage is so low today compared to then because it was just there was so much product going out that had support. And I realize today there are many, many more releases on TikTok and Instagram and on these and on the internet, YouTube, but it doesn't have the muscle of the people that were there to support it and see it through. Plus, radio stations at the time. Ride Like the Wind, which was the first Christopher Cross hit we had, was came out of Miami because of one DJ.
Oh, wow.
Now, you don't have that anymore.
Mm-mm.
One DJ who heard that song in Miami said, I'm going to break this record. And they put it on, and it went. And that was very common back then, where you'd have an advocate in a certain DJ or a certain person who goes, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm playing this on my radio station. Today, it's all by committee. There's only a certain amount of records that'll get on radio or in whatever. And so I think that it's a tougher place to be doing this today.
I remember some stories you used to tell when we were working with you about the early days in working in L.A., for example. Like you said, I remember you talking about how you would produce a song on Friday and then be driving through L.A. on Monday and hear it on the radio station. That's how fast this worked. But the quality was way better than it is now because the pool was smaller, right? I mean,
the pool was smaller.
Yeah.
And also, when I think about, I remember in 1985, I used to be with Warner Brothers Records in L.A. For a few years. And I remember at one of the yearly meetings that they'd have with the entire staff, they were talking about how many actual projects were released worldwide in 1985, 1,200.
Wow.
Now you have that every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Whether it's a song or whether it's whatever kind of a project. So there was the ability to concentrate more on something. And also the thing that you brought up with Friday to Monday, it wasn't uncommon, and especially in the record company that would have a certain kind of a personality at the head. And this was at ABC Dunhill. It happened twice. And we were in the studio on Monday cutting the tracks. The vocal was done the next day. We did overdubs. And on KHJ, which was the premier pop station, Rick Dees and Saturday Man, I'm in my car and there it is. I'm going, whoa, are you kidding me? But it was because the president of the company was so connected that it was just, I don't know how, if he was connected like this, which...
Yeah,
I guarantee there was a lot of that going on.
Oh, yeah.
But the bottom line is that you got results, and you get so spoiled because it wasn't the grind that you see today where there's this entire thing that you got to go through just to get from first base to second base. It was like that you had marketing, you had promotion, you had legal. Everything was under the roof of one company. Well, you guys knew that when you were recording, even as recently as the 90s, and then all of a sudden everything started changing with the internet, and suddenly the artist, the burden was on the artist to figure out a way in which to promote themselves.
Yeah.
And most artists aren't good at self-promotion.
No.
We're
good at dreaming up the idea.
Yeah.
And being the artist.
And you want someone to take that believes in it and take it to the next step.
Yeah.
And part of what I've noticed in the last 10 years is that when you meet with somebody, you have to gauge not only their musical ability, but suddenly you have to gauge their ability at self-promotion, which is kind of an antithesis to where we're supposed to behave anyway. We're not supposed to be self-promoters. But it's forced upon people to figure out many more facets of what they're doing than just, all I want to do is write a song. I'm going to just record it and enjoy that. And all of a sudden, here's all this additional responsibility that comes after that I'm not designed to do, but I'm required to do.
Yeah.
And it really is kind of a tough burden to put on somebody.
Yeah. It's a different world than what you came up through and what I came up through in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah. So when you talk about start working on a song on Monday, here on the radio on Saturday, I have this memory of you talking about Billy, Don't Be a Hero. Was that one of those? Billy,
that was the one. That was one of them. Yeah, that happened, and the other one was unfortunately a record called Undercover Angel.
Oh yeah,
that was a big, and that was another case of that took about 10 days.
Yeah,
The Billy Don't Be a Hero was really literally Monday through Saturday.
Did you produce both of those? Or
I co-produced the Undercover Cover Angel with a guy named Alan O'Day with Steve
Right.
Barry,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other one I was the arranger, the group, and they had a manager mom that was just this. Oh my gosh, it was crazy, and it was like five guys, Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods, I think is what they were called, or something like
I
that.
remember.
And I'll never forget. It was like mind blowing. I was so shocked. I came in Monday. I had an office at ABC, and I'm going, I can't believe. Did you hear that? And Steve's going, yeah. Well, so what? And I'm going, really? It's like, wow. It's like he was used to it.
It was a hit.
Yeah, it is.
Both those songs were hits. I remember those. Those again.
Pretty light fare. I mean, it's just
Well,
kinda,
but I mean, for me, those were songs
Yeah.
I remember
Sure.
listening to on the radio,
Sure.
doing my homework as a kid,
Yeah.
and hearing them every hour, and like, I love these songs, even though.
And remember, categories were radio stations devoted to a certain type of music hadn't happened yet.
Right.
So
Yeah, you could hear country.
you'd hear Frank
pop.
Sinatra, followed by
Yeah.
Waylon Jennings, followed by Led Zeppelin, by the Beatles, and so there was nothing really what I would consider totally uncool about doing that kind of a record, because it would appear next to something that you'd go, wow,
Yeah.
Cream or or
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we got into categories. This is a hard rock station. This is a light rock station. This is a yacht rock station. This is a country station. And everything got segregated in a way, R&B station, that I don't know was that. Motown was right in the middle of that, too.
Right,
Great records. Temptations and Diana Ross and Supremes and all that. So it was like a real cornucopia of every style of music that you can imagine. And as a player, I get called. I'd be on a Neil Diamond session in the morning, Barbra Streisand in the afternoon, and some rock band in the evening, all in one day, playing piano.
Wow.
And so it was really fun. Plus the musicians back then, the cats that you would end up in the studio that was pretty special.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you end up in LA? Or is that where you first got your?
Yeah.
You got into the music industry. Tell me how you ended up.
That
there.
was the only. I mean, there weren't many choices. I'm a Chicago boy,
Yeah.
so in Chicago there was nothing. Growing up, and also it was interesting because while I exhibited the ability to do certain things, my mom viewed that more like a circus act. She could bring people over and say, "Hey, son, go play something for them." But then the minute I started exhibiting a desire to think of in terms of this is what I want to do, it's like, no, you're not going to do that. So I grew up, bring out the monkey, put him on the thing, and have him do it, and they go, "Oh wow!" And then you go back to your room, and when I got serious about this, it scared my mom and dad to death. They went, "No, you can't do that." I went, "Well, I don't know what else I can do."
I don't think any parent ever said, "Yeah, chase your musical dreams."
Yeah, no.
They
Well,
were
they
like,
do now.
Yeah.
But back in those days, it's
No.
kind of like you can't make a living like that.
Right.
And the thing is I was in Chicago, so you really could not make a living at that. So as a teenager, I was playing down on Wells Street at some of the clubs. I really knew I wasn't. I mean, drugs meant nothing to me, and booze meant nothing to me. So while my mother suspected I was into it, I had no interest. All I cared about is playing. So I would do these club gigs, and I'd come home at 3 in the morning, and I went, you know what, this ain't it either. I mean, in the middle of February, you're getting in your car, and it's like 5 below zero, and you're going home, and it's like, what is this? So, as you in your opening talked about how as a kid you would put the headphones on and you'd listen to records, I did the very same thing. Only in my case, it was very much jazz oriented. I loved Oscar Peterson, Art Tatum, all the jazz groups and stuff. I wasn't a big doo-wop guy, so the era of Elvis kind of went over here. I appreciate it now, but at the time, those were not my heroes. My heroes were a whole different bunch of people. But then the Beatles hit, and then the Beach Boys, and all this kind of stuff. And something about what I was hearing I was going, now this has a bit of a sophistication that even though it's I Want to Hold Your Hand, I'm going, there's something different about what I'm hearing. The harmonies. They're not doing just thirds. All of a sudden it's a fifth going to a fourth. I'm going, that's creative harmony. You know what I'm talking
Yep.
about. It
Absolutely.
wasn't the typical, here's the triad, here's the triad. And that's what made me go, the Beatles are special because they don't do the typical thing that you would expect with vocals.
Yeah.
They weren't the triad doo-wop stuff. It was something more unique. So we had a console stereo with the speakers, and I would lay down with my head between the speakers, and I'd put on records, and I'd just lay there, and I'd listen one after another. And then I would hold the vinyl jacket, and I'd be reading L.A., Liverpool, Abbey Road, London, New York, Nashville, never a mention of Chicago. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? Because I knew that there was nobody in Chicago you could talk to.
Yeah.
Who are you going to go see? There was nothing going on. There was no. There were a couple of small record companies but they weren't really. Nothing was going on. So when I graduated high school, I tried university for about a year, and I hated every minute of it except for the music. I came home and I went, you know what? I'm fooling myself. I don't want to be an accountant. I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be any of that stuff. I don't care what my mom and dad says. I cannot do what they want me to do. I got to do what I feel I want to do. And it was more than that. It was a spiritual experience too, because I had become a Christian in 1965 as a 20-year-old, and I was listening to other things other than just my mom and dad discouraging me from whatever this was. And it became very apparent that the Lord was speaking to me going, your opportunities are not here. I have something for you. I have a plan, and it doesn't involve Chicago. So I got on a plane with $3,000 that I'd saved up from all the work that I'd done since I was 14, and I got on a plane without one contact, without anything. It just landed in L.A. And it took about 4 years for something to happen, and it was discouraging. What I did was I found a great church in the interim, Jack Hayford's Church on the Way.
He just passed away.
He did pass away, yeah, unfortunately. But that experience, the 4 years of experience, I would do anything for free. I'll come play. I'll do whatever you want me to do and stuff. I don't know if I'm taking too much time getting to
I
this
love
point.
all this. This is something that, as the young artists that I work with today,
Yeah,
I'm like, where are you performing?
yeah,
Are you just sitting in the studio creating and writing? I'm like,
yeah,
the only way you're going to know
yeah.
what you're all about or what your skill set is get out, get
right.
gigs, get in front of people. I don't care what you sing
Yeah.
or where you sing.
That's right.
Get out and hone that craft in front of people and with other people live on stage.
Exactly.
That's the best way to get yourself prepared
Exactly.
for whatever career in music that you want to get yourself into.
Exactly. And what you're talking about is someone who's going to be out front. I was never interested in out front. I was interested. Larry Knechtel played piano. Hal Blaine played drums. Joe Osborne played bass. Don Randy played piano. So-and-so played this. And that's all I would fixate on. Listen to those guitars. Listen to those keyboard parts. So for me, it wasn't about getting out and playing. It was I wanted to be in the studio creating the tracks for people who wanted to be out front. That was my goal. So in 70, like I said, I went out to L.A. 65 was when I became Christian. I stayed in Chicago for about 2 years fooling myself, and I finally said, Mom, Dad, I got to get on a plane. I got on a plane with L.A. So 1971 was when I got a call from Kenny Loggins. Now, Kenny Loggins wasn't Kenny Loggins back then. He was just some guitar player that was playing in a little band backing up a lady by the name of Marilyn Burroughs, and he had gotten my number from somebody. He said, hey, man, can I meet with you? I said, sure. So we met, and he was telling me about, hey, we're looking for a band to play Magic Mountain with Marilyn Burroughs. I said, okay, I'll play the gig. So we rehearsed and and whatever. And the guitar player, for anybody who knows the name Waddy Wachtel, but Waddy Wachtel was you go back to Jackson Browne, you go to all these artists. He was always in the rhythm. Well, he wasn't Waddy Wachtel at the time. We were just a band that got together and played at Magic Mountain. Well, anyway, a little time went around, and then Kenny calls me. He says, "Hey, man," he says, a guy named Jimmy Messina who was with Poco. He said, we're forming a band, and we'd like for you to be our keyboard player. This is just a matter of weeks. This happened. So then I got involved with that, and we would rehearse every day. And Jimmy, who I love, is the kind of guy that you'll rehearse the same 10 songs for a year before you go in and record a record. And I'm a guy who's going, I'm reading the album jackets, I'm going, I want to do this where I'm 3 hours, I'm playing on a thing and I can move on to something else. And here I am stuck playing the same 10 songs for a year before we go in and record.
Yeah.
It was a CBS, Loggins Messina sitting in was a CBS product. And what was really weird was during that period of time, I had made friends with some people through the church, and there was a gentleman by the name of Jerry McLean, who remains a very close friend of mine to this day. And he and his partner Truett Pratt got a deal with CBS, and I happened to co-write a song that they really wanted to do. And so he told the producer they were going to go in. Back then, you didn't always go in and do an album. You'd go in and do 3 singles. If one single hit, then you do an album. It's very different.
Yeah.
You didn't think in terms of, I have this thing about a project that it starts from here and here. It's this painting. No, it was just, let's get a hit song and then we'll go in and do a record. So the producer, who happened to be the person responsible for the Fifth Dimension, was producing them. And he had Hal Blaine, Joe Osborne, Hal Blaine and Joe Osborne were in the rhythm section, and Larry Carlton.
Oh, wow.
And Jerry tells Bob, the producer, I want this guy named Michael Omartian playing piano. And he goes, what are you talking? I said, I don't know who this guy is. He said, I already got these people. And Jerry, unbeknownst to me, said, this is a deal breaker. I didn't know he said that.
Wow.
And so I got the call from Bob. He says, at CBS Studios or wherever we were at such and such a time. And I'll never forget, I was so sick the night before because I'm going, I know who's on this gig. These are the people I've been watching. I've been looking at these album jackets, and these are the guys on this recording session.
Were you more nervous or more excited?
Nervous. I was shaking because you got to remember, I'm hearing these guys from the age of 17 and 18, and now I'm 20, whatever it is. Yeah. It's now 70 years 71. And I'm sitting there going, I'm going to be playing with these cats tomorrow in a studio that I've never been in and in an environment I've really not been in like this. Yeah. I've been in studios, but it would never be with a rhythm section like this. So I walk in at 10 o'clock and they start with the song that I know, thankfully. And I'll never forget, man, I don't even remember the take. But I remember when they stopped the tape, Hal looked at me and said, I want your phone number. That was the first thing out of his mouth. I went, whoa. So after the 3 songs, and 2 of them I didn't know, and their charts were put in front of me. And because of my background, I could read. And I always encourage that with musicians. Don't just go through life without understanding how to read notes and stuff. Because I know a lot of cats that have lost a lot of opportunities because they don't read.
Yeah.
And you don't have to read a Rachmaninoff piece. All you have to do is be able to these are the notes, this is what they want me to do, and this is the rhythm. And I'll never forget, Joe Osborne and Hal Blaine took me to the Union right after the date was up and had me join, and they hooked me up with a answering service. That afternoon, we went to lunch, and I'm sitting there going, this is surreal what's going on. It was really crazy. I mean, I was really aware of how surreal this was. But in the back of my mind, I said, God put this together, man. This isn't me. This is the Lord put together. Because Bill Schnee, who's a dear friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
And Bill is a very, very, he said to me, Omar, he said, I have never seen someone progress as fast in my entire life as you did between that date, because he was the engineer, until in a month. He said, you were a completely different player in a month.
So do you equate that to God's will in your life?
I think so. I think so. And also having the ability to be challenged and meet the challenge, which I think is very important. Mm-hmm. Because I was being prepared to be able to assimilate all this very rapidly in the 4 years that I was just scuffling around and listening and taking advice and stuff. And I think that people shouldn't fool themselves. If you don't have the ability, don't do this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Don't
Yep.
don't think this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do if you don't have the ability to really do it. And I think some people are fooled.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is that day, and I was booked solid the next week, solid. There were no spaces. I mean, these guys were telling the answering service, "This is your guy. This is your guy." And I remember I'm playing the next week. I'm playing 10 o'clock in the morning. I go to another studio at 1 and at 2, excuse me, and another studio at 7. And I'm meeting all new people, all new drummers, all new guitar players, all new everything. And then the word is getting around.
Yeah.
So I just was so booked that I had to quit Loggins and Messina. And they weren't happy about that because I said, guys, I said, I love you, but I said, my life is not to be on the road with you guys as a backup piano player. I said, that's not enough of a challenge. And they were cool because they hired me. They always had me play. I was, from what I understand, I was the only keyboard player they ever had on a record.
Wow.
So it was kind of miraculous how that all went down. And then I met my wife.
Yeah, I want to get into
this. I met my wife through the recording studio, and but that was kind of the early thing that if I look back before I left LA and I went, you thought you were good? I mean, I'm seriously, because you were a big fish in a very small pond. Whatever musical situation I was in Chicago, I was the natural guy they went to. So could you write these charts for us, or what ideas do you have? Well, this is small time. Now Billy Joel's in the room. What do you think, Omar? What do you think we should do here? What do you think? And you're going,
Wow.
You're asking me? Or would you play accordion on this thing? Or would you do this? And that became the thing. And I started as a player. And that transitioned into an arranger. That transitioned into producer. I was writing for orchestra and all that kind of stuff. And that was all part of just the early training of being able to read.
Yeah.
And hearing things. I always heard stuff. I could hear the string parts on something. I could always hear the horn parts on something. I could hear
Because
that.
that was one of the things. One of my favorite memories of working with you was sitting in a hotel room with the other 3 guys from 4Him in Oklahoma City, and we were about to start work on the Hymns project,
Which is great.
which is
Hymns record is
it is our most popular album today.
seriously, it's such a great record.
Do you know that "Be Thou My Vision" is our #1 stream song is for him?
It's it's beautiful.
And it wasn't even a single.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
it's beautiful. Everybody, go ahead.
But what I was just saying, I remember us talking through each song, and I thought we were going to be there for hours.
Yeah,
talking through arrangements, and you would present an idea for one of the songs, and we'd start to talk through it, and you'd be like, "No, I got it." I'm like, "What do you mean you got it?"
yeah. We had lunches and movies to go to.
Oh yeah, you're like, "No, I hear the whole thing in my head. Let's move on to the next one."
Yeah.
And we must have been.
It
Maybe it took us 90 minutes.
90 minutes, and we had the whole album figured out.
Well,
yeah.
you had the whole album figured out. We were okay with. We were buying into your vision because we knew you so well.
Okay.
Let's take a break here just for a second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tighten this a little bit.
Is
a
it
little bit of
rattling?
noise? Yeah. Oh, that might do it right there. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll take some natural breaks in this as well.
Yeah, sure.
That'll probably be a good place to do that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going here. So I want to talk about a couple of things that you brought up. Meeting Stormy in L.A., and that you talk about being a Christian before you went out to L.A. and started working. I want to know. First of all, I would love for you to tell the story of how you and Stormy met, and also what it was like being a Christian in that environment, because you probably weren't. You were one of the few, I'm sure, that you worked with that had a belief system in the music scene.
Well, I knew that from the day that I accepted Jesus that this was a serious decision, because everything was so scattered around me, including my parents' discouragements. They're not wanting me to do stuff, that there had to be something that I could hold on to. And it turned out to be Interesting. Interesting. I almost felt like there was an angel that took me on the plane and brought me to L.A. There was something going on that was a spiritual, had spiritual content. So in 1971, I got called to do a live session, and that was not uncommon. I mean, the way we worked, we did it in layers. But back then, it wasn't uncommon to walk into a studio and there was a string section. There were background singers. There was a lead singer. There was all this stuff, and I got called to do a Jimmy Owens musical, and it was live. And so I showed up, and there were four background singers, Stormy, my wife, being one of them, and a common friend through church named Terry, that was her friend and my friend, though I didn't know Stormy. And Terry was the contractor for the vocalist. So I walk into the studio and I sit at the piano, and there was a rhythm section, and there was background singers, and there were some string players and whatever. It was a full room. And Terry comes up, and Stormy's there, and Terry introduces me to Stormy, and I'm looking at her and going, wow, yeah, she's beautiful. She was on the Glenn Campbell show. Stormy was a regular on the Glenn Campbell show at the time. Some over here I didn't even know. But anyway, so we're talking, and I remember I was really dealing with a congestion of some sort. It was like a cold, really bad cold. And Stormy says, "You know what? Before we're done, we're going to do 3 days." So I was going to see her 3 days, but the first afternoon, we went till 5, and she said, "You know what?" She says, "I've got something that might knock this out of you." I said, "Oh, okay." So I drove to her. She had an apartment in Studio City, and she fixed me this thing that was like, she was so into this health thing. This is back in the 70s, so a health drink was like, it had texture, things floating around, seeds and all kinds of crud. And I just looked at her while I was drinking it, because I said if her beauty would keep my mind off of how awful what I'm dealing with is. And I mean, it was horrible. Wheat germ, lecithin, what seeds floating and stuff, and it was horrible. But I remember, and it was brief. I spent 15 minutes talking to her, and I went home and went to sleep. And the next day, we're back at the session. The oddest thing happens. This is the second day, and Terry comes up to me, and you got to understand, I don't know the full story, but she tells me, "You need to ask Stormy out." I went, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You need to ask her out." I didn't know what "you need to ask her out" meant for me, but it meant something for Terry. Because what was happening was Stormy was engaged to be married to a complete, I'll leave the word out, not a good guy. And Terry said that Stormy liked me, and so that was enough for her to say, "You need to take her out." Okay, so I go, which I didn't. I didn't ask that. But we were in the next day. And Terry comes, she said, "Have you asked her out for a date?" I said, "No." She said, "I'm asking you to take her." I'm thinking, what is your motivation here? I mean, what is it? And she never told me that she's engaged to be married, and I want you to rescue her from this dog. So I asked Stormy, I said, "Look, you want to go get a pizza?" She said, "Sure." So we sit, we're actually, it was a Mexican restaurant that's still there. It's called Casa Vega. It's on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City. And we went to Casa Vega and got to talking. And I went, wow, she's really a cool person. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. Go back to her house, and we sit there, and I'm looking at the books on her shelf. New Age, crystals,
Oh, wow.
yoga,
Yeah.
and something in me is going, uh-oh. We're not banging on the same drum, man. She's somewhere else. And this is what you were addressing, was the other stuff that goes on in that environment that's very much antithetical to Christianity. And Stormy was completely given over to New Age. And I'd sit there and I would try to talk about Jesus. In fact, I did. It was the first time we were together. She said, "Oh yeah. He's a really good guy, and I levitate and stuff." I'm going, didn't use those words, but she's talking about this kind of. I'm going, "Oh my God, we're not talking about the same thing." But anyway, I'm intrigued, and now I'm thinking, well, I have a missionary thing here now. I'm a missionary because I'm liking her, but I'm not digging what
Yeah.
is.
And I don't know why I had this backwards. For some reason, I remember the story as just the opposite.
No, no. The miracle of it is that we dated for a very brief amount of time, and I never confronted her about, you're holding something back.
Yeah.
You're not telling me something. But I will tell you this, and it really it casts Stormy in a very bad way because Stormy's one of the strongest believers you'll ever
Well,
meet.
she didn't have to hear this, does she?
No, she knows exactly what's going on. And I remember I had given up. I said, hey, I told her, I said, look, I said, there's nothing serious that can happen unless we have spiritual continuity. And she went, I don't even understand what you're talking about. And I would talk about Jesus. She said, well, and I said, no, you don't. I said, you need to accept the Lord in your heart. Da, da. But I kind of, that's kind of that, but I mix it with, I said, no, we're not mixing it with anything. And I'm trying to witness to her, and I'm going, holy cow. Well, anyway, the bad thing that happened, and it really casts a poor light on Stormy because I don't want to do that. But the night of her rehearsal dinner, I knew she was getting married. I get a phone call. This is Stormy. Can I come over and see you? And I'm going, well, what?
The night of her rehearsal, wedding rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I lived on a street called Valley Vista, which was parallel to Ventura Boulevard. And if you went down Valley Vista to its end at Woodman and you took a right, Stormy, her new house with her new husband would be 4 blocks away from me where I was living. So it's right here. And so so she comes over dressed completely up and she's sobbing. And I'm going, what? What's the matter with you? She says, I don't want to do this. I'm going, well, why are you doing this? Well, my mom and dad paid for this. And I said, Stormy, what are you doing? I said, you don't do that. I said, if you don't love the guy and you think he's bad news or whatever it is, I said, cut it off. And she says, well, I want to know what you think. I said, Stormy, I said, I've told you how I feel. I said, we can't have a future unless we feel the same thing spiritually. In fact, I'm commanded to do that. I don't want any problems. And I don't want a problem for you. So she gets married to this clown. And for months, the only way that I could get out of where I go to get to Woodman was to kind of see her house right here. And I'll never forget, because I really liked her. At that point, I really liked her, but I knew there was no possibility. And I felt so bad that she went ahead and married this guy. And some of the stories that she told me, and I will not repeat them, of how he was like, you'd go, oh my God. But she was a very needy. The very thing that happened there was what led her to the Lord. Mm-hmm. That whole experience.
Wow.
So one day, instead of turning left onto Woodman, I decided just to turn right. I had a little Porsche sports car, and I just saw 2 garbage cans sitting out in front of her house, and I just pulled up and I looked over. First time, I never went that way. This is a few months afterwards. And the door opens, and I'm sitting there, and she walks out. And she looks like she's lost 30 pounds.
Wow.
Face is all drawn. She comes up, she said, Michael? I said, yeah, Stormy. I said, so what's going on? You look sick. And she started tearing up, and she said, she says, I'll get through this. And I went, whoa. And it was only about a 3-minute conversation, and I said, well, I hope you're okay. And I went and did whatever I was going to do. So a couple months go by, and I'm at church, and church on the way in the early days was nothing but a chapel. So it was very small. I think it held about 220 people or something, and we'd go. And Jack was big on turn around and pray with the people. We'd have a prayer time where you'd turn around. And anyway, I'm sitting there, like, I'm in maybe the 25th row or whatever, and on row 23, I see a blonde head, but I don't think anything about it. And I get up and turn around and pray. So the row in front of me turns around to me, and she was 3 rows in front, because when she turned around, I saw her and she saw me and her eyes lit up and I went, Stormy, what are you doing here? She had accepted Jesus.
Oh, wow.
So, and Terry was the common person that was there with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she had accepted. Terry took her and Jack Hayford sat for a couple hours and took her through the sinner's prayer and that was, and then I remember right after the service she came up and I went, Stormy. I said, what? She told me, she said, accepted the Lord. And I said, well, you want to go have a, I said, where's your husband? She says, gone. She says, I divorced him. And she had reason to divorce this guy. So just so anybody who wonders, there was a biblical reason why you could divorce this person. Besides, she wasn't a Christian anyway, so she wasn't bound by the same rules. So I took her to lunch, and about 10 months later, we were married.
And then, as big as your career was, and as many projects and hit songs and hit records that you produced and worked on through your career, Stormy probably ended up being more of a household name.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah, because of the books she wrote and being a speaker and
without a doubt.
Yeah, incredible how God worked all that out.
And the Lord knew that for us to be together, there had to be a seriousness about faith as I was, or else it wasn't going to work. And it turned out she was the super spiritual, super Christian, and that she taught me a lot about what it was, because she came from a very terrible thing, which was being locked in closets and being denied any child's basic needs by a very mentally ill mother stuck in Wyoming in the middle of nowhere. So it was bad. So a lot of her internal stuff needed to be worked out, and the Lord really worked it out. And it took a while. And we got married, and we had 2 children and grandchildren. And so, it'll be 50 years this year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. In November, it'll be 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Wow.
What an incredible story.
Power of a Praying Wife was huge.
Yeah.
Power of a Praying
Well, that's
Mom and
that's
Power
the,
of Praying.
that's the series that she and it's funny because her publisher Harvest House, God bless them, when they usually had meetings. So we think you should write a book. She says, no, I've got this thing on my heart, Power of a Praying Wife. Oh, and they said, what? And I remember she said, Michael, she says, God told me this is the book I'm supposed to do, and they're just fighting. I said, Storm, I said, at some point, a Christian company has to respect an author who says, I feel strongly about it. So they let her do it, and it turned out to be like 9 or 10 million sold or whatever it was. And so that was the last time they ever challenged whatever she wanted to do. So, yeah.
Incredible. Well, one of the great byproducts of getting to know you is getting to know Stormy.
Yeah.
And getting to know your incredible family. And so
Yeah.
I want to switch a little bit now to, as much as I loved working with you, I loved hearing your stories, which obviously you've been sharing a lot of that today. But, man, just hearing your stories about working on that Christopher Cross record and working with, Rod Stewart and Michael Bolton and just some of these just amazing things. And we don't have to go into all those things, but, you've had such a rich history. I remember even working in the studio with you one time, and Donna Summer came in.
Oh, yeah.
And took a picture with all of us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that She Works Hard for the Money was such a big, was that late 70s, early 80s?
That was 80s, 83.
Yeah, 83. That was just a monster hit. And you've had this thread through pop music, but then Christian music came along, and I told you on my way over here, I got reacquainted with White Horse.
Yeah, boy,
and
that's an old one.
Man, what they don't make records in Christian music like that anymore.
No.
It's a lost art. It's a lost skill set, really. That if people who really really know music, they know Adam Again and White Horse and the level of musical integrity that you brought to Christian music at the time. And what I want to do is jump now to those Imperials records.
Yeah.
Because really, that's where I was just like, whoa, there's a whole world out here that I want to get to know.
Wow.
And that was the Priority was the first record I
Nope.
bought.
Nope. Yeah. Wow.
And then I went immediately back with the money that I earned mowing lawns
Yeah.
and bought One More Song for You,
Yeah. Which was before that, actually.
which was before that, right?
Yeah.
I went back and got that one and just played them and played them and played them and played them.
Wow.
What was your connection to get now to into the Christian music industry as a transition from the pop industry?
Well, to me, the transition was being asked to do a couple of albums. And that was the first time I said, okay, good. Stormy can write the lyrics. We can get into it now. If you were, I don't know how you were, I don't know, you must have been a young child when that period of time, like the early 70s, what were you, like 3?
So yeah, I was born in '66. So I was,
Yeah. Yeah, you were just a few years old.
yeah.
But if you were to be around as an adult at the time and you said, what is Christian music? Well, Christian music was Southern gospel.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple of hippie artists that kind of sat there strumming their D28s and singing like folk songs.
Yeah.
Neither which appealed to me. I mean, I liked folk. If you call Bob Dylan folk music and maybe the Kingston Trio, I like that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, Southern gospel was not appealing to me just based on the fact that it was so foreign to me. And also I met some people and I went, okay, these are the purveyors of Southern gospel. And they were so personality-wise so different than me. So what got me into it was raised on the Beatles, the Beach Boys, jazz and stuff. I'm given an opportunity with Stormy, to put a stamp on this that someone could go, well, I don't know if this is Christian music or not, but listen to those lyrics.
Wow.
And I think it really kind of raised the hackles of some people because some people were really caught up on the style would determine whether you're saved or not. I'm going, what does that have to do with anything? Really? It's the person. And I remember in that time going, does it matter that you have a distorted guitar on? Does that show that you're a child of Satan? Or is that just
For some people it
is
did.
that a musical thing that you want to put on something just as a paint as a type of paint on the canvas? And I, because of probably my stupidity, but I never went deep enough to go, why would you have a problem with that? It's just a sound. Well, the sound was attached to certain groups that they would go, oh, these people are all satanic.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like I was trying to put I was trying to cut that thinking off by doing the records I did, saying that a believer can actually have a bigger palette of musical stuff available. Why does there have to be that connection? So at the time, gospel music was righteous and rock music was unrighteous, and for probably good reason. But I found there was a lot of unrighteousness amongst the gospel music people
You're
too.
right, there was.
In fact, I had my eyes really opened with an experience that I had that it was so depressing to me that I went, this is the music that I thought people were free, the stuff that I'm seeing, or at least trying to be free. So I found more righteousness in some of the people that loved rock music around me than I did in the actual music that's supposed to be quote unquote Christian music. So to me, and then the other thing I had to get over was the fact that in my mind I went, how do you conduct a business and stay really focused on the Lord when money's coming in and all that kind of stuff? So there's always a challenge to that. So, but that was. As time went on, and I did White Horse and Adam again, and I really wasn't accepted in any world with that. I had an underground following as a result of that, but I didn't follow up on it because I didn't consider myself an artist. I wanted to be behind the scenes, so I didn't really do what you would normally do to keep those things alive, which is to go out and perform them, which I never did because I was too busy in the studio.
Yeah.
So the Imperials I was in the studio with Christopher Cross in '79 working on his record. I was a Warner Brothers producer, and he was on Warner Brothers, so that's how we got going, and that's another story. But during that time is when I got a call. Stan Mosier and a couple guys called and said, "Hey, we would like for you to consider doing an Imperials record." And I went, and they gave me the last one that they did, and I went, "Well, what am I? Sail on and stuff," and I'm going, "Guys, I don't know if I can do. I don't know if I have enough experience in this particular." They said, "We don't want you to do that. We don't want you to have experience in that idiom. We want them to do more like what you do." And I went, "Really?" Because I knew there was one person in the group at the time that would probably go, "Yeah," but there'd be three others that would go, "No."
Yeah, Russ was the
Russ
key there.
Taff was the guy that if Russ Taff was not in that group and I didn't meet with him and he opened his mouth and sang, I would have said no, because I'm not your guy for this. So Russ, and by the way, I loved all the guys. We had a great time. I mean, it was good for me, as it was. Yeah, it was really good for me, because I was able to. I mean, and Jim was the one that was the funniest, because the looks he'd give me when I'd ask him to do something. He'd look. He said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Jim," I said, "I know you can do this. I can't. I don't do this. I don't do this." And Armin would be going, "Jim," and he'd be like this, "Jim, just try." So with Jim, what I would do was I'd have him sing this part, and then I would immediately have him double it. When he'd come in, he'd go, "That's me?" I said, "Yeah." So he got really into that vibe. But I had to kind of trick him into it.
Yeah.
But it was funny because we just had Armin's funeral a couple 3 weeks ago, and Jim and I just sat there and we were laughing about how funny that was the first time we were trying to work together. And we did one more song for you in 29 days from start to finish.
Wow.
Start to finish.
Wow.
Tracks. I only had them for 6 days for all the vocals.
Incredible.
They were, you know what it was like. They were always on the road. You guys were always on the road.
Yeah.
You only have so much time, and the only time they had was 6 days on this. Boom. You start, and you got to get all the vocals, backgrounds, and everything done in those days.
I love that, because for him's first record, we did in 6 days, all the vocals in 6 days.
Yeah, you had to.
Because we had to get back on the road. We had dates to do.
Exactly. There's a practical side to this, and it's not fun because you want to be able to sit back and go, "Man, that's cool." No, we've got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
We don't have time to sit in here and talk about it. Let's move on.
Yeah. The first time that I got to work with you.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah. So we talked our studio, our record company into hiring you as one of our producers. This would have been on the Ride album, our fourth album.
Yes.
And I was so nervous coming into the studio with you the first time, because I just knew your catalog. I knew who you were, and I'm just like, I hope I'm good enough to be in there. And we went in to record the lead vocal for Real Thing.
Yeah.
And it was at that point, and I still look back on it, it's still one of my favorite recording experiences of my life.
Cool.
But I just remember it being so easy. Like, it was so much fun working with you and Terry Christian, and it was the first time I'd ever done a comp vocal. Because with the
Seriously? You had to do the whole...
So with every other
you just punched in lines?
Yeah, you produce line by line by line, and so you would spend... I remember, I'll never forget, I think it was on that record that I had done a vocal with another producer, and it took 9 hours to get the vocal done. And I remember running down Real Thing, and maybe we did it 4 or 5 times.
At the most.
At the most, and you said, "Yeah, go to lunch.
Yeah.
We're going to comp it, come back, and we'll pick up anything we missed." And I think maybe we picked up 2 or 3 lines, a couple of words, and that was it. And I remember that's one of my favorite vocals that I've recorded. Even to this day, I go back and listen to it and just go, it's such a difference. Not that I didn't love what we got with other producers, but there was something about just the way you worked and your vision that you brought to the whole thing. It was just such a joy.
Yeah. Well, not to blow smoke, brother, but anybody who's spending 9 hours on a vocal with you're doing it is out of their minds. Because I'll be honest with you, and I've told you this before. I said there's only been 2 tenors that I know that have pitch that is just flawless, and it's you and Richard Marx. It's just, and to me, when I first talked to Donna Summer about working, she said that Quincy Jones would make her do 48 tracks of vocals.
Wow.
She said, I was so exhausted, I would never go beyond 3 because I'm going, what are we shooting for? to ruin you. For what? What are we looking to find? Same with you. At a certain point, you go, you know what? And we didn't have to. We weren't tuning anything. We were just. That's how good you guys were. We didn't tune things. It was just what it was.
Yeah.
And so, the whole idea of comping vocals, which for anybody who doesn't know what that is you pick a few tracks and then on the console you'll mute or open depending on, we need 3 words from this, and you'd pick the track and you'd audition them, and then you'd combine them to another track to make a final vocal. And to me, it's always the minimal amount that you want to do, because you want to maintain the continuity of phrasing and how the emotional expenditure of that line, and you don't want to mess it up too much. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to old records, man, you don't hear the pristine tuning like you do today, because we have the ability to make something perfect. And perfect is not what you want.
It's not interesting.
It's not interesting. It's not interesting. It's boring. But anyway, well, I'm glad that was a good experience. And to me, we played ball. We used to have mitts, and we'd go out in the field and we'd play ball.
Yep.
To me, it's not that you're not taking the music seriously. You just pour everything you have into it while you're working, and then you get out of it to refresh yourself and then to go back. And so to me, the idea of spending a day getting a hi-hat sound or a bass drum sound, or making sure that we've exhausted you for 8 hours trying to get a vocal, after a while you've really missed it. It's gone.
Yeah, I agree.
I was doing a thing for Shania Twain, and I'm not dropping names, but I'll never forget, because Mutt Lang,
but that's okay.
Mutt Lang, who's one of my favorite producers, called me to play piano, and now I understood what was going on. So we get to the studio. For 3.5 to 4 hours, all we're doing is playing it over and over again, and all they're doing is working on the sounds. So you're playing on a track for four hours, and in your phones, he'll go, Omar, I like that lick, write that down. So I'd have to write down on the music exactly what I did at that moment. For 4 hours, we're going, and she's singing every single time.
Wow.
He has to hear the vocal going at the same time. So she's working for 4 hours. We take a lunch break and we come back. We cut a track, which is perfect. And we come in, he says, I'm not sure about that bass drum sound. So Paul Lime has to change bass drums, and here we go again. Another 4 hours. And at the end of 8 hours or 9 hours on one track, first of all, I admire the fact that she could sit there and keep singing like that. Never was she not singing, even on a rundown. Even if it was for a few bars. I came in, I walked out, I said, that sounds terrible to me. And everybody's going, that's horrible. What we had back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon was it. And then you hear it on the radio and you go, that sounds pretty good. But you're so worn. I mean, it's a mental thing. You're so worn out with the process that there's nothing fun about any of it.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Well, you made it fun, and that's why we always wanted to work with you. Not only was the product amazing, but we had fun. We had great meals together, and we go play
Fellowship,
golf.
and
and
we play golf.
Go out and play ball. Mm-hmm. And it was just we went on vacations together. I mean,
that's right. That was fun.
That's when you've got someone that you know you're going to walk in the studio. They're going to challenge you. Yeah. But we're also going to be friends through this, and that's a big difference than just walking in with someone that's just that's just fulfilling a contract.
Right.
And I want to go to the Hymns record, because that comes back to me as the record that people remember the most of, or maybe it's their most beloved album for him. And I told you this before we got started that
Be Thou My Vision.
Be Thou My Vision is our most downloaded song on streaming.
Wow.
Or our most streamed song, which blows my mind. It's not Where There's Faith or Future Generations or Basics of Life. It's a song that wasn't even a single. So it just tells you the impact that album had on everybody. And I got to tell you the story. You mentioned working with Kenny Loggins. I got to meet him backstage at a show in Phoenix years ago. Our mutual friend Chris Rodriguez was playing with him at the time and invited us to come back. And Kenny walked up to Mark and I, and Chris said, "Hey, these are the guys I told you about for him." and he went, "Oh man, I heard your hymns record. It's incredible."
Oh wow, wow,
And
yeah,
at that point, I was like, "Up, done."
yeah, 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 yeah,
He's like my vocal hero,
yeah,
number one
yeah,
vocal
yeah,
hero.
yeah.
For him to compliment
Oh yeah,
what we did on that record, but then to make the connection that how close you guys were back in the
yeah,
day, and then
yeah,
you producing that project.
yeah,
Talk about just a full circle moment for me at that point. I'm just like, I don't really have to do anything else in
yeah.
my
I know.
career.
Yeah, that's
I
really
feel
cool.
like I've accomplished
Yeah,
that, at least that external desire of I want to. I just want to lay something down that'll be good and last forever.
I
But
agree. You know, the funny thing about it, and we talk about it, and I don't know if I can even bring it up, but the bottom line is we did that record and it was very successful. And then we wanted to do another one, and the record company says, "I don't think we need another one. We need to do something else." And we're all going,
yeah,
where is the disconnect here? I mean,
sure,
we're riding on something that sold hundreds of thousands of records, and it's almost like wants to write itself. Volume two,
yeah.
and the record company says, "No, we think we should do something completely different." And we're all looking at each other, going, "Who comes up with this stuff?" Right? Do you remember that? I mean,
Just,
I
yeah,
remember
I do.
being perplexed
Yeah,
at if you're having, and the thing about it is, I agree with you. When I That's an album that actually I have upstairs in our main room. It's one of the albums that when people come over for dinners and stuff like that, it's
well,
it's amongst the ones I play because it really is to me a very special record because we've taken a lot of unbelievably important hymns through the ages. I mean, some of these are really important with incredible stories behind them. And we
yeah, because
did,
we researched
yeah,
them. Yeah, we actually
yeah.
researched every one of
Oh
them.
my gosh! I
Yeah,
mean, it is well with my soul. All the different things. I mean, the one that we did with what's the one? Oh, Sacred Head.
oh, Sacred Head Not
With
Wounded.
all that wild, it's it's
Yeah,
it's just it was just wild
yeah.
what
The
happened.
love
And
of God.
yeah, oh yeah,
Man, that's a
with the real
that's
Middle Eastern kind of
yeah,
vibe going on. Yeah,
very
we
cool.
took some liberties with all that stuff,
Yeah,
and it really panned out, and it was a great record. And so I always sit there and go, and that's not exclusive to that record company. I've been part of that where why are we doing this when
yeah,
we should be doing this? And it's not that I'm right every time, but there's certain things where it's just crying out
yeah.
that anybody with the brain would do this. So anyway,
Well, you just kind of know as an artist, this
yeah,
connects with our audience.
yeah,
This has touched a nerve
yeah,
somewhere that we need to keep
yeah.
giving people that they're really connecting to. And
And it's a natural thing. The packaging was beautiful too.
yeah,
Man.
it
Oh,
was.
that package was
Yeah.
beautiful with the way the cover was and the way oh, it's just
So if
beautiful.
you haven't heard it, it's called Hymns, a Place
Oh,
of
you
Worship.
got to hear it. I mean, and if you can get a hold of, they say CDs are starting to come
Yeah.
back.
How about that?
So CDs, if you can get a CD, the package is just
It
beautiful.
really is.
It's made out of it's like a cardboard or
Yeah.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a jewel case.
Yeah.
It comes in like a vinyl album
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
That
Yeah.
was such a pleasure to work on.
Oh man.
And I even look back at that time. You and I had some conversation as we were making that
Yeah.
record because I was feeling the pull to leave for him.
Yeah, go and do
Or
some
not just
solos.
leave for him, but leave Christian music
Yeah.
and go into the church
Yeah.
as a worship pastor. And I look back on some of those days in the studio where it's just you and I late at night, and
Yeah.
just you being so kind to me,
Well,
helping me process some of those thoughts and ideas, and you know. That's where friendship is tested in those times, because you had that was part of your livelihood, was producing for us, and
right.
and you very could have easily been selfish and go, oh no, you should stay here and
Yeah.
make records with for him and with me. And a good friend is
Yeah.
bigger than a business
Yeah.
transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, the friendship, the only thing what makes it all worth it to me is that you're just not going in and punching a clock. You're actually developing a relationship
Yeah.
with who you're working with. And I I would come home and Stormy, I'd tell her all about what was going on, and she would tell you that one of the components that I would always emphasize is not just the music, but these are good people and they're fun to be with and they're friends. That's always important.
Yeah, it
I
is.
remember when we were down in Mobile doing one of those records. We had so much fun, man. We had so much
Were we
fun down
recording
there.
at Kirk's house?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That was one of them, yeah.
One of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we did some stuff at
Integrity. Right.
And man, we had some good seafood down there. Oh,
The best seafood in the world, in my opinion. is on the
Fairhope,
Gulf
good
Coast.
pizza. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I remember the meals too.
Yeah.
And then playing some golf. That
Yeah.
was fun too. Yeah, it was always fun.
So one of the stories I love to tell, so I do a lot of coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the stories I love to tell is something that happened between you and I that I'll always remember. And, you know, for a while, I took down all of my #1 plaques and awards and all that kind of stuff just because I was like, I want to move on.
Yeah, let's
and
move on from
stuff.
that.
But then after a while, I was like, no, that's, that was an accomplishment, and God did something through that. So I put them up, and what that turned into was it was a way for me to say, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Look around.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And where that came from was, you probably don't even remember this, but it was late one night, and we were working on BGVs, and you and I got into a little bit of a disagreement.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to try this idea, and you're like, dude, trust me, sing it like this. I got the part. I already know how it's gonna go. And I'm like, and I kept pushing on it.
Yeah.
And you said, I'll tell you what, do something for me. Go down, walk down the hallway, get you a cup of coffee, look around.
No, I did not say
you
that.
did.
I did.
You
Oh
did.
my God.
You said, when you come back here, tell me what you see. Tell me what you saw, and you tell me who has the better idea. And
I didn't
between the studio and the break room was this long hallway, and it was the walls were covered from floor to ceiling in platinum albums.
Yeah, but
So I knew exactly what you were saying when you told me to go grab a cup of coffee and look around. But I never, and I just, of course, I went, okay, I get it.
Oh my God.
I totally understand. I'm out of my depth here. We'll do it your way.
I'm disgusted with myself,
But
actually.
no, it was. I understood it immediately after you said that, and to this day it sticks with me. But it was a good thing.
Yeah.
It was a good thing because youth wants to one up the ones that came before them.
Yeah.
They think they're smarter. They think they've got it figured out. And it's one thing I've enjoyed about getting older and being a mentor and a coach to so many younger artists and worship leaders and musicians is to kind of show them all the stuff and just go, look, you may not have heard of me before, or you may not understand what I've done before, but if you'll look around, there's not a lot of guys that have accomplished
Exactly.
this.
That's exactly
so
right.
I do know what I'm talking about,
exactly.
and I can help you.
Yeah.
And so I just want you to know
That's pretty funny.
that's
pretty funny.
You actually made a big impression on me that has stuck with me to this day, and that's probably one of my favorite Omar stories.
Oh, that's really funny.
But
I can't believe I did that.
you did more than that.
Oh,
you
my
were
God.
you were a piece of work in the studio, man. We just loved being around you. You guys were you made it fun.
Yeah.
We worked fast,
Yeah.
but we got a lot of great stuff done.
Sure.
I was listening the other day to one of the last songs that you and I worked on together. You and for him worked on together was The Final Word.
Oh, yeah.
And I go back to that and go, that might be my finest vocal
Wow.
that I ever laid down, but it was because of our relationship and the way we worked together and what you brought to that track. And I like personally, I go back and listen to that song a lot just to go,
song.
man, that's what that
Good
to me
song.
that was the pinnacle.
That's a good
Great
song.
song, and just I just remember those days so fondly.
Yeah. Yeah.